I'm with Mr. Ramjee Chandran, which we are going to talk about now, from manufacturing of silicon metal to the
Right.
silicon city of India. I mean, you've
Hmm.
got your bases covered. You also love the city of Bangalore. That's very clear in your Instagram videos or your podcast. Let's talk about your podcast that's currently happening, that's currently underway. The History of Bangalore. I think you just wrapped up season one and you
Yeah.
have taken a small teaser for season two. Uh,
Yeah.
and talk to me about, because I am a Bangalorean. I was born, raised in South Bangalore. So
Hmm.
I love the city. Every time it rains, I mean, I capture and put up an Instagram story. I think like you did, but with a little bit of information about the Palakkad Gap and stuff like that. What it takes? Is it
Right.
like your friends and your like everybody around you should be probably like helping you? Any piece of information that comes in, oh, I probably have to send it to Ramji because he's going to probably like include that in his podcast about Bangalore. So what does it take? Like, what all does it take to like make a podcast like this? Giving so much information about the history of the city.
Well, to begin with, whatever you just described actually is the one thing that does not happen.
Right.
So it's how it works is like this. It's like I've been writing about the city of Bangalore in my media company called Explore City now
Right.
for nearly 3 decades. And I found that I knew very little about the history, and then I found that everybody else knew as much or as little. So I started to get deeper into it to find out. And what occurred to me was most people start telling the history of Bangalore from 1537, and that's when Kempe Gowda set up the Pete. I wanted to find out what are the circumstances that led to his setting up this Pete in 1537. It can't be that suddenly there was a burst of light and history just started with the
Right.
Pete at that point in time. When you take a look at Bangalore, you'll take a look at the greater Bangalore. Everything that we see around us in Bengaluru, Tumkur, Hebbal, Yelahanka, they're all parts of the urban city today. What about the histories of all of those places? So when I started to dig in, I found that the history that has a direct impact on us, I start telling this history from the first political moves in this area, and that was the Gangas in 350 AD and the Kadambas around the same time. The season two of my podcast that you mentioned over there is going to be the time that led up to the actual creation of the Pete itself in 15 the things around that time of 1537 that led up to it in the last mile. And that history I will take all the way up to the fall of Tipu Sultan in 1799. That's going to be another 1 year. And the third year of it is going to be British India and British Bangalore, which is from 1800 to independence.
But where do you reference it from? Like, how much time or like effort does it take to research all these things?
What I do, this is what I do for 10 hours a day is research it.
Right.
And the only way that I can do it. Now, a lot of information about what I just mentioned exists, but it exists in the academy.
Right.
Almost all the history has been written on inscription stones.
Hmm.
Now there's a wonderful move by the Mythic Society. There's a gentleman called Uday digging up inscription stones, and he has brought modern technology to read it. And they're unearthing wonderful stuff. But even the stuff that has already been published, and
Hmm.
all of it got published, let me say loosely, before 1920, has the entire history of not just Bengaluru, but also Karnataka in those inscription stones.
Right.
So I literally spend between 8 and 10 hours a day sitting there and reading those inscriptions, associated histories, books of histories that were written at the turn of the century, starting from say 1850 right through 1920 and thereabouts. And it's a wonderful read. It's wonderful. It's all up there, but it's all in the academy. Nothing is out to public. And in the public, we have all the wrong information about Bengaluru, starting
Right.
from the name Bengaluru itself. And what we believe to be some story about boiled beans is very far from the truth.
All right. Looking forward to the season two, of course.
Right.
Give us a sneak peek into that. Like, for example, when I come from the Jayanagar Banshankari area of Bangalore City, any bit of news that you could give about a bit of like South Bangalore or any history about that, or a sneak peek into season two, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, let me put it this way. Incidentally, we have something else in common. My very first residence, just after I was born, was Vani Vilas Road. So we have that in common,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
So that's been my growing up too. It's not until college that I actually moved out of there.
Hmm.
But another side of my family that goes back many generations in Bangalore have Baswangudi as well as Cooktown. They have a lot of areas in which they've been living.
Right.
So I go back very, very long in Bangalore. There's a history there itself.
Right.
I've also been signed up by Penguin to write the book History of Bangalore, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm writing the history book, and for this, my history is actually going back to 3.5 billion years ago, when the
Hmm.
Indian plates, the continental shift started to happen.
Right.
So, to give you a sneak peek into all of that stuff, the history that I'm writing is whatever a Bengaluru person today can encounter on a daily basis. That's where my history starts. And
Hmm.
that starts with the Lal Bagh Rock, which is
Right.
that old. And it was there before mankind evolved.
Right.
Before
Right.
anything evolved, there's probably no air to breathe at the time that that rock was created.
Oh, okay.
So I'm starting from there, and I've been doing a lot of work and researching and speaking to geologists who have written some wonderful academic papers and so on. So right now, that's all I've been doing: reading academic papers, speaking to academicians, and they've all been very, very helpful. The podcast is going to continue as I write the book as well. And season two of the podcast is going to talk entirely about the time of Kempe Gowda, what happened after him. The Marathas came into it, the Mughals came into it. There was a lot of kerfuffle. Then the Wadiyars came to the fore. And when Vijayanagara fell, it is the Wadiyars that finally took over and
Right.
ruled this area. And if you don't count modern day politics, it's still their rule, if you see, so to speak. The succession continues to this day, making them one of the longest running dynasties in the world.
You spoke about the Lal Bagh Rock that is so old that it's been existing since even before humans, came into the other humans, the evolution in
Right.
humans happened. Can
Yeah,
you talk to us a little bit more about that so that like we could get a bit of like I know we are going to definitely subscribe to the book and the podcast series, but if you
sure.
could tell a bit of that trivia about that Lal Bagh Rock that you said,
Happy to.
yeah,
I'm happy to. Of course, there's going to be an Instagram reel on that coming up very soon.
right,
In large, there was the supercontinent of Gondwana near Antarctica from so many billions of years ago. And that actually belonged to another supercontinent, but let's not go that far back.
right,
This continent, Gondwana, broke up. Australasia, Africa, all of these things, all these continents started to move away because of the movement of the seabeds. All of these things started to shift.
hmm,
Now, the Indian plates, the part that we understand to be India today, broke away and traveled at a phenomenal pace. 20 centimeters a year was the speed of travel of this entire block of land. And it went there and slammed into the Eurasian plates. And when it did, the Himalayas were formed.
right,
But on the way, there was a huge amount of volcanic activity when these plates were crossing what we know to be Seychelles today.
hmm,
And it was a short period of time that this volcanic activity happened. By short, I mean 10 million years. And these things threw up a lot of rocks from deep inside the surface, almost near the core.
right,
And two things happened. Number one, Madagascar broke away from the Indian plates and went and settled near Africa.
right.
The rest of the landmass moved in along with the Indian plates. But in the Deccan itself, all the rocks were pushed up. And the rocks that you see encountered today when you drive around Karnataka, we see these odd shaped hills. We call them hills, but they're really like boulders stacked
Yes.
one on top of another. And you're looking at them and saying, these are hills, but they are rocks, and so on and so forth. And there's an entire geology about all of these things that's available. It's been available for years. I'm just speaking all that story today.
Right.
But Lal Bagh Rock was one of them, and
Right.
we go there, we walk on it, we spill chitrana on it, we do whatever we
Right.
so while we do all those things, we are actually coming into contact directly with something that occurred before the Himalayas did.
Right.
So when the break of Madagascar happened and all of that volcanic activity happened, it pushed up it pushed up a fault in the edge of the landmass on the west coast. And this is what we call mountains. They're not really mountains, they're just a big, huge fault, and we call them the Western Ghats.
Right. Right.
And that also created the entire Deccan Plateau to tilt towards the east.
Hmm.
And because of that, almost every single major river in the south flows from west to east, even though
Right.
it starts not even 100 kilometers away from the west coast.
Hmm.
So it's the stuff on the other side of the mountain, other side of the Ghats that flow down. So you do have a few, Periyar and the others, that come down. But all the major rivers, Krishna, Godavari, Kaveri, all of them start from there, from the Western Ghats, and flow into the Bay of Bengal.
Right.
And that happens because of this tilt. Now, this geography has determined everything that has happened in the Deccan Plateau and therefore directly relevant to Bangalore, which is the wars, the agriculture, the culture, the navigation, the water harvesting, rain harvesting systems. It's all completely connected. So I'm in my book that I'm writing right now, I'm finding a thread between that. In the podcast, I'm telling the political history. On the Instagram page, I'm mixing it up. I'm just giving little clips, little nuggets of information.
Right.
So it's been received quite well.
It was wonderful talking to you. I went through the Instagram videos as well. You've also used, I think, some AI generation
Oh,
technology
yeah.
to create the visual effect of like whatever we see or whatever you want to convey.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
went through the few episodes of the podcast as well. Really looking forward to your book about the history of Bangalore. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your insights, Mr. Ramjee Chandran.
Thank you for having me.